Alright everyone, hello, what is up? TheLoganatorz here, and welcome back to KSP Conquest. Today we have a few contracts to complete. We have to collect some science data around the KSC, and we have to take some EVA reports around the KSC too. So we have Bob Kerman out, ready to complete these tasks in the sidecar. I had to actually redesign this really quick because these wheels were originally back here, but these things don't even have brakes on them, so I needed to include these guys. So, let's go around the KSC and collect some science. Alright, so Bob here's just going to collect all the science reports. This actually took a very long time, which is why all this footage is sped up to 5 times speed, and I'm going to make some cuts in as well, just for your viewing pleasure, so we can get to the more interesting parts of the video. But yeah, this did take a long time, because 50 science reports I needed to get. Took about 20 minutes to complete, but Bob was able to do it. Nothing the sidecar couldn't handle. So we were able to get all that, which gave us about 86 science. I'll talk about that more in a bit, but we also had to complete another contract too, which is just to take some EVA reports around the KSC. This wasn't too hard. I had to get off of the lander to actually collect the reports, so that was a bit realistic. I liked that. And just completing those contracts, getting some money, and we're going to go spend that money soon. But let's go back to the KSC and collect all of our rewards. Alright, all those experiments around the KSC actually yield us 82.6 science. I thought it was a little bit cheaty just to go around all the KSC buildings and get science, so I turned down the science reward factor to 40%. I thought I did it in the last episode, but I didn't, so it's at 40% now just because more of a challenge and it's more fun. So anyways, we need to go spend all that science, and the first thing we're going to spend it on is electronics, so we can get those solar panels, and we get a nice dish too, which I think I'm going to use to get my next contract, which, if we look in the mission control, point a dish out from Kerbin. So if we have a satellite orbiting Kerbin with that dish that we just are starting to research, we can actually point it out to the Mun and Minmus and complete this contract. Alright, here we are on the launch pad with Vanguard 1. Vanguard means new ideas, people who pave the way for new ideas. So that's why we named the first satellite in the series Vanguard 1, because there's going to be a bunch of Vanguard satellites who explore various bodies around the Kerbin system, and Kerbal system probably. We'll probably do just that. But anyways, this rocket is just small enough to fit on the launch pad. It's not my proudest design. There's no adapter here or anything because we haven't unlocked the parts. We don't have a fairing, so this is going to be interesting to fly. But I think that swivel engine is going to counteract the massive drag that we're going to have at the front. So we're going to need to be a bit careful, but I think we can just about manage. So let's get into orbit and call it a day in 3, 2, 1, and lift off. At first, the launch of Vanguard 1 is going pretty well, but then it just kind of flips out because that dish that we put up top makes the whole center of drag way above the center of mass, and the whole thing is inherently unstable. So we're not able to fly this thing to orbit today because we just lost so much delta V when we flipped out, and it's kind of hard to fly a spaceship backwards, so it's a loss. We did get a little bit of money from the booster contract, but we still lost a lot since the whole launch vehicle was destroyed. So we're going to need to go back into the VAB, build another one with tail fins on the back so the whole thing is going to be stable, and then we're going to launch that, hopefully, into orbit. Alright, here's my second attempt, Vanguard 2. We still don't have those fairings, of course, so we're going to have to try something else. And what I did is I put 3 tail fins at the back. I wanted to do 4, but I didn't have the part count to do so. I also put a hammer solar rocket booster under the bottom because we have a contract to test it. So I guess this is going to be Vanguard 2. It's kind of funny, the first Vanguard went kind of similarly to the first Vanguard mission, since it failed on the launch pad. However, this one didn't quite fail on the launch pad, so at least we passed there. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's launch Vanguard 2, hopefully into orbit in 3, 2, 1. Alright, nice. So my mission profile is just to go as steep as possible to get out of the thicker part of the atmosphere as soon as we can, so that way we can reduce how much drag is being pushed on the dish that we have up top, which is slowing us down and making the whole launch pretty inefficient. So once we get up there, we're just going to jettison the first stage and go on our Terrier. We do flip out a little bit, but since we're traveling upwards and there's not as much atmospheric drag up here, we're able to compensate with the Terrier's gimbal. So nicely done there. We also got a little bit of extra money for the hammer that we put on the first stage. when we launched originally, so a little bit more extra cash there. And yeah, pretty much it right there. We got into orbit, no problems at all. And we're just going to ditch the second stage into the atmosphere and carry on with the main propulsion on the probe itself. We can actually use the satellite for communications if you want to. We have so much fuel, we could probably go to the Mun and perform a flyby, maybe even get into orbit. So there's a lot we can do with this. So first successful satellite, everyone, Vanguard 2. Alright, so we have a few more contracts to complete, the first of which is to map 75% of Kerbin's surface. And to do so, we're going to send up a mapping satellite into polar orbit. We still don't have those fairings, so we need to be careful again on our launch, but I think it's going to be successful. We'll actually see, though, for the launch. Next up, we also have to build a spacecraft to fly by the Mun and return some scientific data. To do that, we are constructing Mun Explorer 1, which will take Jebediah Kerman on a flyby of the Mun and hopefully bring him back in one piece. So those are the two missions that I put in the build queue. Let's just fast forward through the build time and launch the first one, which will be Atlas 1. Alright, here we are on the launch pad with Atlas 1. Because Atlas is like a Greek word for mapping or something like that, so I named the satellite Atlas 1. And we are going to explore Kerbin with it with this low resolution altimetry scanner. We're going to complete a contract for that too. So, not too bad at all. We also have Mun Explorer 1, which is 2 ways a day from completion. I have that building in the background. Jebediah is going to fly and do a flyby of the Mun, so that's going to come up here soon. But anyways, let's get Atlas 1 off the pad and into polar orbit in 3, 2, 1, and we are away. And there we go, Atlas 1 is off the pad and we are pushing our way to a polar orbit. We're just counteracting the planet's spin initially, so we're going to burn a little bit more to the west, so then we get a nice straight polar orbit. And then that way we can have just the planet rotate under us while a scanner just kind of scans Kerbin. That's why we need to be in a polar orbit for this thing to work. Our craft's upper stage actually is very unstable. It spins out just a little bit, but we're in the upper part of the atmosphere now, and the Terrier's engine is just enough to counteract the instability that this craft has. So we actually do push our way into orbit, and all is fine. Once we get back within communications range, we deploy the altimetry scanner, which we are going to just let the satellite sit in orbit and scan the environment below. So we're going to let it sit there and do its job while we go launch Mun Explorer 1. Alright, here we are on the launch pad with Mun Explorer 1. This spacecraft should have enough life support in the cabin for Mun flyby and back, assuming we do everything efficiently and quickly. And I've also included a solar panel to recharge the batteries, so hopefully all goes according to plan. Now, actually that ScanSat satellite that we launched mapped the whole area of the planet a lot quicker than I thought, so I'm going to bring up the map. Look at that! The map is already pretty much complete. There's a few streaks of where it still needs to map, but for the most part, it's done its job, so we got that contract pretty easily. I'm glad I did that. That is a really cool contract. But anyways, we need to focus on the mission at hand. Jebediah Kerman getting ready to launch to the Mun in 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Mun Explorer 1 is on its way. We have a really uneventful launch. The only thing that kind of happened was I took too steep of a trajectory. This is because the two outboard engines on the craft are actually reliants, not swivels. So they had a little bit extra power and not the gimbal range. Well, no gimbal range at all, so I couldn't really pitch over that well. But it's alright, we managed to get into orbit pretty easily anyways, since we packed a lot of extra fuel on this thing just in case anything goes wrong. So once we're in orbit, we just plan our maneuver, and by planning our maneuver, it's just time warping to the horizon and burning towards the Mun, and then stopping the burn when it looks about right, because we don't have the upgrade to the tracking station right now, so we can't really plan our encounters at all, so we need to just eyeball everything. So we're gonna need to upgrade the tracking station eventually, but right now everything's looking good. We're just time warping up to the Mun, and we do get an encounter, and we have a pretty good encounter actually. So we just time warp down, we get some science. I accidentally time warp past space near the Mun, but I'm like, alright, that's fine, I'll just collect that science when we eventually do our Mun orbit mission. So that's alright there. The orbit I do get, though, after that Mun assist is not an ideal one, so I have to burn towards Kerbin in order to get there faster to save on life support. Because we only have like 3 days of life support in this capsule, and we've wasted quite a bit of it already, so we need to get back to Kerbin as fast as we possibly can to save Jebediah Kerbin from suffocation. That would not be a very nice ending to his space flying career. So we do actually time warp down with about an hour and 30 minutes of life support to spare, so that's good. And we just dive right into the atmosphere, going 3 kilometers per second, the fastest Kerbal Nod ever in space. And but we actually lose those science experiments anyway, so I guess we're just gonna have to collect more science on the Mun orbit mission that's coming up. But Jebediah Kerbin's alright. We still have the report, the crew report inside his capsule, so we're going to complete the contract of the Mun flyby anyway. So, all in all, pretty successful mission. For the final mission today, we're going to be launching another radar satellite. We need to go scan the surface of the Mun, as well as complete an orbit contract to get a lot more money. So we're going to do just that. This is Atlas 2. It's going to go into a polar orbit around the Mun and attempt to scan the surface of the Mun for altimetry data and send that back to Kerbin. So let's go and launch the vessel. Alright, the last mission for today is Atlas 2. Atlas 2 is going to go all the way to the Mun and start to map the surface. It's going to be an altitude scan, and hopefully this is going to help with future Mun missions. So anyways, let's get on with it in 3, 2, 1, and lift off. Atlas 2 is off the pad. We have a bit of a slow start here. The thrust to weight ratio is barely enough to get the spacecraft off the pad, but we are able to actually get ourselves up and deploy our second stage without any instability problems this time, so that's always a good thing. And we just push our way on into orbit. We're going to have enough fuel in that stage to push us all the way to the moon. And if we do it nicely, we'll probably get into orbit with the amount of Delta V that we have on board. So pretty good there. We fly to the Mun, everything goes well, and then I realize, wait a minute, I don't have a communications network. So we kind of lose contact, but luckily for us, one of our communication satellites, well, not really communications, Vanguard 2 itself, has a really big dish, and it's able to point towards us and give us a connection. So we were saved by Vanguard 2, and we use our fuel to get into orbit. And we just barely get into orbit. We literally lose connection 2 seconds after we get into orbit, so cutting it really close there, but we did just about manage. However, the bad news is the craft's solar panels are not orientated correctly, so we can't actually deploy our scanner to start scanning the Mun because we don't have any power to do so, and we can't communicate back to Kerbin to orientate our spacecraft the right way. However, the good news is we can actually just time warp for the sun itself to move to a different part of the sky, since Kerbin orbits Kerbal, and we're going to be in a different orientation after a few weeks, maybe even months. So after some time, we should be orientated correctly, and we will be able to get power to perform the scanning mission. So luckily we did complete that orbit contract, and we got a ton of money. We have over 500,000 funds. So we spent that on the tracking station and the astronaut complex too. So some upgrades that are going to be completed in the next video. But guys, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode of KSP Conquest. If you did, make sure to like so I know you guys enjoy this series. And subscribe for more Kerbal Space Program. But with that being said, I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Goodbye everyone, and thank you for watching.